Something's very wrong with Miss Puff, but what if I told you the truth is even darker than you could imagine? Or what you may have heard. I watched all the episodes featuring Miss Puff and came to an unsettling conclusion. No one in Bikini Bottom is safe. From the outside, Mrs. Puff looks like your normal small-town go-getter, a self-made woman with humble ambitions and a peaceful dedication to her passions, hobbies, and life in general. With her driving school attached to a submerged lighthouse and surrounded by a stunt driving course, she lives a dream life in Bikini Bottom. But that's what we're supposed to think.
Oh, gracious! Oh, gracious! Oh!
Teaching is her true passion, and she's proud of her ability to have helped nearly every student in Bikini Bottom master the art of driving. Except SpongeBob, that is. She and SpongeBob are always on an endless quest to get him a driver's license, but due to his reckless boating skills, they never succeed.
That way! Cheat that way!
Many believe this is why she went insane. But no, it goes so much deeper than that, and gets so much darker. The life Penelope Puff lives is a sham, and Bikini Bottom isn't the only place she's ended up. She also has a past in New Kelp City, although probably not under the same name she has now. Mrs. Puff's psyche is hooked in a deranged loop, where she's trying to live a normal life, but her past keeps catching up to her.
Doing here so late. Whatever this is.
It's going on your permanent record!
When you try to live two lives, or trust at same time, like Mrs. Puff, it could lead to serious personality issues, and eventually your brain could start manipulating their reality to make everything make sense. What makes this worse is that there is no asylum or mental health facilities in Bikini Bottom, only a hospital, and of course the police station where she spends a lot of time. SpongeBob has failed his driving test with her a staggering 1,258,056 times, which will make anyone go cuckoo bananas. But the possibility of that number being the truth is severely unlikely, pointing to the fact that Mrs. Puff may have exaggerated it in her head. In doing time, she says she doesn't want to go down the road of insanity again, but clearly she's never left that road. In fact, she's online driving faster and faster towards a cliff. The episode No Free Rides and Bumper to Bumper both feature infinite pictures of Mrs. Puff on the wall of her home, a cycle that just keeps turning, like never-ending Russian nesting dolls, a sign that she's trapped in either her current life or her past. In SpongeBob Long Pants, we see Mrs. Puff waking up from a nightmare where SpongeBob passes his test with another instructor, manifesting her real yearning and ending this cycle. How tight her grip on reality is at this stage is questionable, because we even see her having a conversation with an ice sculpture of SpongeBob at a party, as if it's the real thing. But what really intrigues me is this.
Yes, all alone in my nice soft room.
Made of sponge. Please, that's not a dream.
I can't believe it. It was all a dream. I'm not going to jail.
Why would you go to jail? You already did your time.
Now, what in the name of Poseidon's pecs is that all about? Don't worry, it'll all make sense soon. Mrs. Puff ran away from a dark criminal past life.
Local consensus places the blame on this negligent, selfish driving instructor who...
And I believe that her driving school is some kind of safe house, not organized by the police, but rather by a crime family she used to be a part of. This could be partly a way to keep her safe from the authorities, but sometimes it also feels like a punishment, something that can be taken away at any moment if she doesn't perform to their standards. In Mrs. Puff, You're Fired, an episode from season 4, Mrs. Puff gets fired and is replaced by a stricter teacher. This specifically points to the fact that she doesn't own the school as we were led to believe, but that there are other powers in charge. Is her being fired a direct cause of her failures with SpongeBob that often leads to destruction? Does this place too much focus on her and the school, making the organization that really owns it nervous? This could be why they tried to remove her. One of the first clues we get that she's well versed in the ways of the underworld is when she gives SpongeBob a fake license in the episode No Free Rides.
Besides, here's your license.
My license.
In this same episode, she also hotwires and steals SpongeBob's boat car, dressed in a black mask that fits her like a glove.
I hope I still remember how to do this.
She does this because she's afraid of the devastation SpongeBob will inflict on Bikini Bottom if he drives. But this isn't her conscience speaking. This is the voice of self-preservation, evident in the way she talks about it.
What have I done? Everyone will know that I let him slide through school. I'll have to move to a new city, start a new boating school with a new name. No, not again.
It's still interesting to me that she thinks of the boating school as hers, when we've already established that it is a place she can get fired from. This points to a tangent disconnection from reality. As the viewer, we know without a doubt that Mrs. Puff has a sordid past. For instance, when SpongeBob works at the Salty Spittoon in the episode Salty Sponge, Mrs. Puff comes in dressed in biker gear. Everyone there is afraid of her and knows her as Puff the Tough.
Pow!
How the hell does a driving school instructor get a name like that? In the SpongeBob comics and computer games, her criminal past is even more evident. In a frame of a comic book, she admits that she used to rob banks, and in the game SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom, where your main task is to gather stolen artwork from the Rock Bottom Museum and return them to Mrs. Puff, when SpongeBob asks Mrs. Puff why she needs the artwork, she responds in a serious tone with, "Don't ask questions you're not prepared to know the answers to." Also, it's clear as day that she's on the run. If you've seen the newspaper front page in Lighthouse Louie, which features a mugshot of Mrs. Puff and a headline that reads, "Deranged boat teacher makes getaway." And of course, there's one more clue the newspaper is the New Kelp Post, which is probably the last place she was forced to flee from, with the help of the organization who owns her, of course. In the same episode, she instructs SpongeBob to clean up her lighthouse, into which she's been throwing junk, as she calls it, for 20 years. When you look closely, you'll see that very little of the junk actually belongs to her, but includes items like treasure chests, a teddy bear, a diamond ring, a necklace, a television, and even SpongeBob's diary. It's almost like she's collecting collateral on all the citizens of Bikini Bottom, or holding on to their items of value so she has leverage on them. But one of the most telling items, except for the New Kelp Post newspaper, is a folder with the name Mrs. Puff written on a tab. Now, this can either be her stash of forged identity documents, or could it be her police file? Either way, who has a folder with their own name in it? In any case, SpongeBob eats all the items and spits them out again in neat boxes, ready to send to a trash compactor or burn, if you ask me. Because I believe Mrs. Puff wants to make another run for it. At this stage, her life's a mess. Between her past life of crime and the organization, the police, and SpongeBob, she's losing it. Has already lost it. She needs a clean start, and I think she's got a devious idea, which I'll soon discuss. But this idea wasn't her first. At first, she thought the best way to get away from SpongeBob and whoever else is in charge of the driving school and her life is to go to jail. Behind bars, no one can hurt her, right? And she just loves it there.
Of the positives, let's see. I've got no more papers to grade. Yeah.
She does anything she can to end up in the safety of the slammer, from crashing into a police car and ditching jury duty to littering. The part I love and that intrigues the hell out of me is that she leaves balloon animals at the scenes of her crimes, which is also stated in the New Kelp Post, and which we see when she steals SpongeBob's car. It's not the fact that a pufferfish from deep in the ocean knows what a giraffe looks like that arouses my curiosity, but rather the reason she leaves them lying around. It's supposedly to confuse the police, but I think it's more of a case of breadcrumbs. She wants to be caught. She wants to be in prison.
I'm staying.
But why?
I like it here. These are my people. And besides, if I'm in here, that means I won't have to deal with you.
But the police have to be onto her and her affiliation with an underground network. Every time she gets in trouble, she walks free again in no time. Because, you know what? The police are watching her, and although she's done some bad things, they want to get the big guys in cuffs. And as she gets herself in jail more and more often, they get more creative to keep her out. In the episode Summer Job, where she goes to prison again for a number of reasons, inside she is sent to the prison's driver's ed class. At first, she is pleased to be in an easy class until she sees SpongeBob as the teacher. That has to be hell. But these are the lengths the police are going to keep her out of prison and on the street where they can keep an eye on her activities. So, prison doesn't work for her as an escape anymore, which brings me to that devious idea I mentioned earlier. Let's start with the episode titled Arbor Day Disarray. In a scene, she starts admitting her crimes to a tree, a cathartic action because, of course, normally, trees can't tattle on you.
I love talking to someone who knows how to keep a secret.
Shell City? Now, if you've seen the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, you'll know that Shell City is a dangerous souvenir shop, and in this shop hangs the dried out corpse of a blowfish. Also, Mrs. Puff briefly mentions Mr. Puff in the episode Krusty Love, revealing that he was turned into a lamp, and in the same episode, she says that she doesn't like to talk about it. Scaly, if you ask me. But anyway, these days Mrs. Puff is in a romantic relationship with Mr. Krabs. Their relationship begins in the episode Krusty Love, Season 2, Episode 3, where Mr. Krabs falls for Mrs. Puff and tries to impress her with extravagant gifts. Their bond continues in later episodes, such as Whirly Brains and My Two Krabses, where their affection is shown. But I believe this is all a long game for Mrs. Puff. She needs to get away from the organization and her old life of crime, and she needs to get away from SpongeBob, who's driving her bonkers. But she needs money to create that new identity and move to a new place. And what does Mr. Krabs have a lot of? Yep, cash.
So alive! $10, any amount will do. Cha-ching, cha-ching. It's no contest. There's only one thing that...
I'm sorry. Okay, I didn't write this story. I'm only presenting you with theories and facts. And if you don't believe me that the love between Mrs. Puff and Mr. Krabs isn't real, go have a look at this episode.
I think your sponge should be around here somewhere.
Didn't even feel you slowed down. You've got such a gentle foot on the pedal.
Gosh, no one's ever said I had a gentle foot before.
In The Getaway, she meets Dorsal Dan, a getaway driver, and falls in love while she's still in a relationship with Mr. Krabs. So, if you want to believe it or not, it all adds up. Mrs. Puff wants to kill Mr. Krabs, take his money, and get the hell out of Bikini Bottom. I think we can even assume that she killed her own husband as well. And you know what they say, the first time is always the hardest. Or am I just overthinking all of this? Let me know in the comments.